a lot of students obviously are interested in about how do they get hired. Now we've given a lot of advice that you should get retail experience, you should find mentors, you should network with people. What are some of the key elements that people should include either in a resume, or we were talking earlier prior to the panel that your social media brand is also just as important as your resume? Who wants to start off answering that question?
Sure. Okay, I've seen so many resumes that have made no experience into like 3 pages. If you have no experience, just own it. Like I want to meet you. If you say you want to be a designer, great, I'm going to meet you, and then I'm going to ask you, what do you want to start with? If you've done like a theater show and you did sound, I don't want to know that. I want to know what, like, if you absolutely have no work experience, just put your, the things you want to see or do. I just can't read a 3-page resume of nothing.
Anybody else?
One thing I would say is to put your accomplishments. So traditionally on resumes, we put the, like, I don't know, proficient in Microsoft Word. And yeah, you know, it does go through a computer system where they do catch that. So I'm not telling you not to put that on there. But one thing that I would say is accomplishments you've had in any job, really highlight that at the beginning of every single job opportunity you've had. You know, for me, right now I'm at Cadillac Fairview, but at the top, if I were to update my resume, at the top I would say I collaborated with Humber College to create a window display. Like, that's the first thing, because at the end of the day, anybody can type, anyone can make a PowerPoint presentation, but it's like, what did you do that was special? I type a lot of things at my time at Cadillac Fairview, right? But it's what made me different from the other person that could have done the same. So really highlighting what you've done at the beginning of each section. And one thing I will say is a lot of times we're rushing through the 9-to-5 day and we forget what we've done because we're just so focused on getting it done. And I do it all the time. And before you're done or you've completed your resume and you submit it, take a second to really think about what you've done and even bounce off ideas with your friends or your colleagues. Because there's been a lot of times that I've just been rushing through the day. I've been talking with my manager and they're like, Dom, did you know that you spoke to Humber College and you created this great partnership? And I'm like, yeah, I did, but it didn't really sink in because I was just going through the motions. So feel free to bounce off ideas with anybody else that can help you. So they might even tell you something you might be forgetting to put on your resume as well.
I think that's really good advice, and I think it's also important because as fashion students, you're also in a very creative space. So your resume doesn't necessarily need to be Times New Roman 12 font. It can be, you know, not super bright colors. Perhaps Christine's might be. But
actually, it's very, very plain.
But, you know, show a little bit of your personality because you have to remember people are looking at hundreds and hundreds of resumes. And I think the point that Dominique makes is really tell the person what it is that you accomplished in the job. You know, we can all do customer service. We can all do a bunch of tasks that we know are in every single resume, but what sets you apart?
I think creating your own branding too. I think I just realized now on the top of my resume, I have my name, but I have like a little coat hanger hanging off the S. So that's just, you know, use your creativity in that respect too. And actually I hired a makeup artist this year too who actually put her resume in this clear, like nice folder. So it wasn't like the super rigid paper, but she had the beautiful letterhead and I was like, oh, I could feel who this woman was. And lo and behold, when I met her, she was exactly that.
And one thing that just came top of mind is highlight what you do best. So for example, if you have a threshold of experience in retail and you're hiring and you are applying for that key holder position, that assistant manager position, put your experience first, and then your education go at the end. If you have so much experience that we kind of touched on before, then maybe you want to highlight your education, and then your education would go at the beginning, and then your experience could follow.
There are 2 pieces of advice that was given to me years ago that I found super helpful. One of which was to look at the job listing that you're applying for and try to pick out like important points in there that you can relate to. So with whatever job experience you have, if those experiences can speak to the listing themselves, just make sure you hit those notes. Another thing was to point out numbers. So if you are part of, I don't know, let's say putting on a fashion show here at Humber College, in that experience, make sure you let the employer know how many people attended. Any numbers or metrics that you can include would impress them to say, hey, your work was actually in front of X amount of people and it made this kind of impact. So numbers are really important. And then just going back to what you said about social media, I can't tell you, I don't remember the last time I sent out my hard resume, but I can tell you the last time somebody asked me for my social media handles to see what I've been up to, what I talk about, and what I represent, and that was last week. Yeah, it happens all the time, and I think this is the day and age that we live in. It's the digital age, and it's a lot easier for someone to just log onto your Facebook, your Twitter, or your Instagram, rather than flipping through 3 pages of text. So just make sure you're mindful of what you're putting out there, because it can come back and reflect who you are 5 years from now. So super important.
And that's great advice for our students who are going to be going out into the industry very soon and looking for their dream job. And it's important to keep track of your social media and make sure that any potential employers like what they see on, it's all PG per se.
Yeah. Or cat pictures. I'll hire you if you have cats.
Or cat pictures for Christine. I wanted to move on to mentorship because we're all here. That means we all are into networking. I wanted to ask our panelists, first and foremost, do you have a mentor? And second of all, how did you find your mentor?
I can start.
Sabina?
My dear friend Roger, who is sitting back there, I met Roger through a family friend years ago, and he sort of instantly took me under his wing and was like, come to these events. When you find a mentor, though, just make sure that they're not having to sort of babysit you. You don't want to be just taking too much from them. You also want to add value to their lives. Roger and I are great friends now, and we still go to events together and get along really well. And I have a lot of mentors in this room right now. And yeah, it's good to have mentors and people that you can sort of follow along.
I actually don't have a mentor, but I joined, CAFCAD, which is Costume Association in town. So that was really great for networking. So there's a ton of experienced costume designers and illustrators and all those types in there, and they throw events, and just getting involved like that and communicating with your community is great. Is there stuff for fashion? Is there a fashion association?
I believe there is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fashion Group International?
Yeah. Well, Fashion is international. Aside from that, but yeah,
yeah,
that's a great way to start. So, and then maybe you'll find somebody in there. Yeah.
Actually, my mentor is also here, the lovely Sue Rodeberg. She was my professor at Seneca College. Hello. Hi. She's an absolute fabulous woman, and it's also another thing that we talked about earlier, maintaining your relationships with your professors and your faculty, especially if you have a really good rapport with them. There's no reason to lose that contact as you move on throughout your career, and they also want to know how you guys are doing because they've also invested so much of their energy and their time into you guys. So forge that relationship if you have it, if it's already in place. And Sue and I had coffee a couple weeks ago just to catch up. We've known each other for years, so now it's just a really beautiful friendship that we have.
Oh.
Anyone else have a mentor on the panel?
I don't have a designated mentor per se, but my recommendation, what I've done is I've always tried to connect with people in the industry, like my manager per se. So my general manager who manages the center shopping doll mills, I often go to, whether I have a question, or a lot of the times too, I'm just like, what would you do in this scenario? And sometimes she'll make you think, make you do like the legwork, but then she'll say, okay, this is what I would do with this client. So finding someone in industry I feel is really important. And it could be a manager, it could just be somebody who just graduated from the program, but always find someone in the industry.
and maybe you'll find your mentor here this evening. I'd like to highlight one of my mentors as well, Sue Roedberg, professor at Seneca College and a nominating chair for Fashion Group International. And I would like to ask Sue to give some advice to the students in the room this evening on fashion mentorship or anything that comes top of mind. Thank you, Sue, for being here.
But I want to correct something that Paige said. She was very good in retail math.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Jennifer mentioned just before we started that I was going to say a few words, so this lovely young lady gave me a receipt of hers. But what really moved me as I was listening to these incredible panelists is the real message that yes, you're all students, you have to learn those technical skills, but what we do encourage in the classroom and in labs, in our programs, I ran a boutique at Seneca, is the soft skills. And here's what I heard, and I ran out of room, but really I was hearing the same message over. Communicating, listening, being out there, building relationships. I love, Sabina, about your spreadsheet of relationships, and I'm going to start one of those. Networking, it's a small industry. Connecting, being patient and being passionate. And honestly, I could not encourage you any more strongly than they have, is that these are skills that you don't necessarily learn in the classroom. You're there, you're learning the technical skills of the job, but as you relate with your faculty and with other students, with your jobs, and I loved how you encouraged them that yes, every retail job is very important. It isn't just, wow, same old retail, can't wait till it's over. You're connecting with the customers, you're connecting with the merchandise, you're connecting with the corporate culture. And all of those things are key attributes that you take with you no matter what you do. The topic of mentoring, and I'm touched that you said that, is I did retire because my now late mother was very ill and I just needed to be more available, sorry. I didn't know how my retirement was going to play out. I'm actually doing a bit of consulting. It's my time to give back to an industry that has been incredibly good to me. I'll run you through some of the crazy jobs I had. But what has happened is grads are reaching out. And I meet with about 3 former students every week, and I'm putting it into a spreadsheet. And sometimes it's to cry on my shoulder, sometimes it's find me another job, which I've done a few of those. Sometimes it's just to connect, like with Paige. And I'm talking grads who are vice president of Hudson Bay Company down to a new grad who is still working on getting her 2 years before she can apply for permanent resident, and everything in between. And it is so rich for me. It is so incredible to connect with these people. And so I am encouraging you is to be in touch with your professors, even after graduating, and be in touch with people you worked with in previous jobs. So just to give you a quick rundown, I started my career in Winnipeg, and some of you may know that there was a store called Eaton's, which was huge. In Winnipeg, it had 51% market share. If you said you were going shopping, you really meant you were going to Eaton's. It was synonymous. And Eaton's had a junior council. So they would have 1 girl and 1 guy from each school. So the schools sent 3 of each. Eaton's interviewed them, and then for a year, the girl, and harumph about this, the girl was called a junior counselor and the guy was called a junior executive. Need to have stepped back and talked to them about those titles. Anyway, at the end of that year, and we were known throughout the city because we wore a uniform, we worked in the stores. If Eaton's was sponsoring the Santa Claus Parade, we got people from our school. If they were sponsoring a rock concert, we were there helping. And at the end of the year, they elected one girl and one guy to stay on. So I was elected, and I was now in university. And the interesting thing that was happening is I had my psychology assignment due, paper to write, but because I was representing Eaton's on 17 magazine, I had my 17 assignment, and I was way more into the 17 assignment. And the woman at 17 magazine said, "You should consider a career in this industry." I didn't even know there was an industry. Anyway, fast forward, I became their teen fashion coordinator, counselor. I was on showing Eaton's fashions on TV every Saturday. I was going to the 17 magazine shows in New York. We were doing 17 shows in Eaton's. It was a huge thing. Eaton's was just the pulse of the city. I continued doing my university part-time, and then I decided it was time to move on. And I moved to Montreal, and they said, "We're looking for somebody." I gave myself 3 months to find a job because Eaton said, "We're holding the job for you." So I had 3 months, and I was like fast trying to learn my French. And I was called into the Bay, and they said, "We see you have some teaching experience because you taught this 17 beauty workshop, and you also taught this etiquette course to children." And I didn't tell you about that part. "And we would hire you if you could teach new staff how to use the computers, the cash registers, etc., but you have to do it in French." So anyway, I did it, and then I eventually moved into the buying office. And then the buying office moved to Toronto, so I was transferred here. And the teaching thing sort of fell into my lap. And I had little kids. It was hard with all the travel that the buying involves, as Paige knows. And I found my new home at Seneca, and it was beyond incredible. And I ran a boutique, so I was still dealing with vendors and still building budgets and financial statements, and so I got my fix. And now I'm nominating chair. I have been for a number of years, of Fashion Group, and back to this word that found itself on this paper several times, networking. Fashion Group is the networking organization, and in our industry, you have to network, you have to meet people. You absolutely never know who you meet might lead to some future job, and also how you may run into them later, so you keep those relationships real and honest. So Jennifer mentioned the student membership. Once you're out in the industry, there's an associate membership and then executive membership. And for me, Fashion Group is just an incredible organization, and it is a networking organization. So I encourage you strongly to get involved.
Thank you so much, Sue. As you can tell, she is a very passionate woman about fashion and also networking. So thank you very much, Sue. So now we're going to open it up to questions from the audience for our panelists, and then we'll open it up to networking, and we'll have photographs. And does anyone have the first question? A burning question? Yes, Audrey in the back.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm Audrey. I'm on the FGI Toronto board. I'm a logistics and customs specialist, which does somehow relate to fashion. And I'm in the beauty and cosmetics sphere. My question to you guys is, can you tell us about, one of those experiences that was kind of a nightmare experience and a big challenge, and maybe something you took away from that? kind of your kind of war story, as you call it in the logistics industry.
Well, I will. So mine was, I was in theater and I was working with this one actress, and she was supposed to play 20 years old, but she herself was 42. So I put her in what 20-somethings would wear, and she looked at it, pulled at it, and said, I would never wear this, and tore it off and threw it on the ground. And I thought, that was incredibly disrespectful. I said, yeah, I'm aware you wouldn't wear it, but I'm saying this is what's best for this character. And she just put, and I was young, I think I was 21, I thought, oh my gosh, if this is how it's gonna be, I can't go forward without any further education. So that is what led me to quit that job and get more education. That piece of paper that said, I know what I'm doing when I'm dressing you. So that was my nightmare that led me to that.
So I've got a bit of a question as well. Sorry, I kind of came out of the way. More so for the audience, and then just back to the panel. You guys are obviously still in school. How many of you, just by a show of hands, and I mean no disrespect to the traditional jobs, the buying jobs will never go away. Brigitte and I were talking earlier about the new era of jobs, you know, very much in the film industry as well. And a whole new world open to all of you. So just by a show of hands, how many are looking at getting into the buying or retail worlds? Just show of hands. And how many of you, the dream job being in social or in some sort of a format within social media? So what's the balance? What's the balance of the dream jobs? Who wants to take the first one? No time to be shy. You've got a full room of panelists here. If nobody puts up their hand, I'm going to jam the mic in front of someone. So who's first?
Don't be afraid to put yourself
Over here,
out there.
Roger.
Yay.
Great.
Thank you.
You're asking what the balance is between the traditional and non-traditional.
I'm sorry?
You're asking what the question is between traditional.
No, just what you guys want. There's the new era of jobs in the fashion industry and very much of traditional jobs. So what you're learning in school, what is your dream job?
So for me, I'm really into, I'm in PR. I'm not taking fashion, but it is like my passion. So for me, I am kind of merging the two already, just here. But kind of what I'm seeing is I'm more obviously into the business side of it, being into PR, and I think that on social media and online, and in that way, you can make connections there that you can use in the traditional jobs. So I think it's a really good way to blend it. What they were saying too about how online can be your resume. So if someone sees you on there and they're like, oh, this is what you do, this is really interesting, can I help you with this in your traditional job, but like through this channel of communication.
Anybody have a comment on that?
You know, you make such a good point because in this day and age, so many different industries are becoming blended. So when I started as a marketing assistant at Cadillac Fairview, I was thinking, okay, all I do is marketing, that's it. But within a year of the job, now I'm doing event planning. Now I'm hopping into PR, and I'm like, wait, but that wasn't part of the job spectrum. But it all starts to really blend in, where you really essentially become a jack of all trades. One thing I will say in regards to social media and the power that it plays, just a little note for everybody. Prior to my time at Cadillac Fairview, which I am right now, I was just in retail. I was at McMaster University. I was almost graduating, maybe like a year and a half to graduation, and I had applied to this. Well, I guess I would say entered into this contest. It was just you post your favorite photos online, you hashtag Mapleview Shopping Center, and the person who wins gets a prize. To condense it, I ended up winning, and I ended up going in to retrieve my prize, and my mom was like, you should tell them that this is the industry that you want to get into. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, all I'm doing is coming up to pick up a prize. You know, now I'm asking for a job. It just seems, right? It seems a little bit out of reach. But I took my mom on her advice. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I went in, I asked for the prize that I had won, and I gave in my resume. Anyways, a year went by. I didn't hear anything. I completely forgot about the contest that I won. And then I got a call a year later. And yeah, which is really insane. I got a call a year later, and she was like, do you remember you won a contest? Does that sound familiar? And I'm like, it's a little bit. She's like, we have an opening. If you're interested, it's in a marketing role. And I was like, yes, say the word. And the rest was history. I was there for about half a year. So long story short to say, so many different avenues that would be separate. That's just social media, that's just fashion, just PR. Now we're living in the age where now everything is really cumulative. Everything really comes full circle where you really are a jack of all trades and you'll be touching on so many different things rather than just one.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Any other questions? Quick questions?
This is just kind of for Paige. Can you just like walk us through like what a buyer does in a typical day?
To be honest, no day is the same. And I mean, there's a lot of admin work that you do on a daily basis. That's no surprise to anyone, but it could be a day in the office where you're following up with vendors, you're following up on purchase orders. It could be a day where you're working on your market schedule. It could be a day where you're in market and you're at market appointments. You may go to a fashion show, which earlier on in your career you probably won't. And even in my career right now, I've been to 2 in my life, which is fabulous. But we don't normally go to shows. It's more so the writing appointments, the meeting with vendors, forging those relationships, getting your orders in. We kind of go to Fashion Week after the tail end of all the shows happen, and we do all of the workload pretty much that follows. But no day is the same. It's honestly just a whirlwind of so many things. It could be a day that you're at the DC unpacking boxes yourself or locating a shipment. It could be a day where you're spending half the day in accounts payable's office because you're figuring out an invoice. It could honestly be so many different things. I mean, today I've been working on 2 orders simultaneously. They're both due tomorrow. We'll get it done because that's what we do as buyers. We get it done. But yeah, no day is the same. There's always something on the go.
Thank you very much, Paige. So that concludes our question and answer period for tonight. But now I invite all of you to mix and mingle with our panelists, with each other, take photos in front of our Fashion Group International signage with Paul, and I thank you everyone for coming. And if there's one thing that I hope you took away from tonight, the significance and importance of networking, and I invite you to network with all of our panelists and each other. So thank you very much, everyone.